Another movie review for you. This is the 1985 movie After Hours, and it's directed by one of my favourite directors, Martin Scorsese. Now, this movie followed his predecessor, Last Temptation of Christ, an excellent movie that I will get to review at some stage. But that movie cost a huge amount of money, and there was a considerable amount of pressure put on Scorsese because Last Temptation of Christ wasn't a success at the box office, and of course he'd slowly been increasing the cost of producing movies from his early days. Mean Street was directed on a shoestring, but then Taxi Driver upped it, and then The King of Comedy went further, and so Scorsese, as much as anyone, decided that he was going to make a punchy movie on a shoestring budget, and this is After Hours. Let's go through the details. It's produced by Robert Colesbury, Griffin Dunn, and Amy Robinson. The credit for producer there from Griffin Dunn. He was also the lead actor in this movie. Screenwriter Joseph Minion. To the cast then. Griffin Dunn in the lead role as Paul Hackett. Rosanna Arquette played Marcy. Verna Bloom played June. Fiorentina played Kiki. She was a papier-mâché sculptress in this movie. Terry Garr plays Julie, a cocktail waitress. John Hurd plays Tom, the bartender. And then we had appearances by Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin. You may recall Cheech and Chong as involved in many touring events for Frank Zappa. And Catherine O'Hara plays Gail, an ice cream truck driver. And there are lots of other assorted supporting acts in this movie. And the movie is set in New York City. It's predominantly set in Soho, which is a part of New York that's basically a nighttime venue. It's where you find a lot of the interest at night, so to speak, with clubs, gay bars, of course prostitution, and it's a pretty sort of seedy place, and that's where the setting of this movie focuses on. So, After Hours then, the 1985 movie directed by Martin Scorsese, a look at life in New York City late at night in the Soho area. Now that's New York City, not London, where the bars are open late and the locals hit diners and clubs, some of which are open all night. Anyway, it all starts at Paul's workplace. He's the lead character in this movie, and he's tutoring a new staff member on VDU skills. You may remember VDU, Video Display Unit. That was before we called them personal computers. The mild-mannered and terminally hapless Paul, played by Griffin Dunn, in the defining role of his career, it has to be said, encounters Marcy after work. Marcy's played by Rosanna Arquette, in a coffee shop. And there's a Tropic of Cancer novel being read. Anyway, he gets into a chat up and books a date to visit her at a desolate and rain-drenched loft in Soho later that evening via a phone call. And once he sets out on this journey, things turn into something that could only be described as bizarre. First, Paul finding himself entangled with an intertwined web of gooky characters, including an obsessive cocktail waitress played by Terry Garr, a suicidal girl, a possible murderous sculptress played by Lida Fiorentini, an unhinged an unhinged ice cream truck driver, Catherine O'Hara, and a whole host of others that represent some of the wackiest nut jobs in cinema. No one else seems to notice, however, and it's so bizarre, except for Paul. It's after hours. Different rules apply. So, as Paul gets into the taxi, we witness some very highly strung classical style music as this wacky ride begins. The driver is very symbolic of the craziness that will follow in this movie, and Paul's got a $20 bill ready to pay for the ride, but because the car's swaying from side to side and the window is slightly ajar, the money floats out the window. And so Paul's first challenge when they stop is to persuade the taxi driver that he will find him and pay because he's out of cash. Not appreciated, of course. And he then lets himself into the building courtesy of keys that are thrown from a second floor window by a very sort of risque type girl. And he then meets her. Her name's Kiki, and she's a papier-mâché sculptress, and she's in the middle of her piece de résistance by the look of it. She shares the rooms with Marcy, and within minutes she's complaining of neck ache, and Paul responds, as his character indicates throughout, a very helpful young man, and he delivers some massage to the neck, to a complete stranger, it has to be said, to her shoulders and neck. And Paul then responds like she's a long lost friend. They've only met 5 minutes earlier. These types of incidents mount up as the clock ticks on through the night. Marcy then returns, and she seems intent on living for the moment. Paul learns of a boyfriend. He sees chilling pictures in a book of Burns that he finds on the shelf. He notices cuts to Marcy's body, and she shares with him how she lost her virginity to her husband, who is around but at work. Creates a picture for Paul of a girl with an unpredictable personality, damaged, and he panics and leaves for the street and the underground. Not enough money though for the train, and a hostile authority figure creates the next challenge. But anyway, he then moves on, and he moves to a diner. It's pouring with rain, and he seeks solace there, and he finds a friend. The bartender, played by John Hurd, starts off with a degree of normality and agrees to lend Paul some money, and then goes to the cash register to get the necessary amount, but he can't open it. And yeah, the key, it's in his apartment along the street, and of course he's concerned about the break-ins in the neighbourhood, in the apartment building, and so he does a deal, a quid pro quo with Paul. You go and get the key to the till and check that the alarm's on, and I will give you some money for the train home. Paul agrees to this, but then we've already witnessed Hurd going completely mania-like with psychotic kicks to the till after he can't open it. So another indicator of the type of characters that Paul's meeting as the night goes on. Once he's been in and out of the room, he then met by two gays on the staircase who accuse him of being a burglar. And they let him pass, but they're very, very uncertain about his honesty. As he heads back to the bar, he then comes across the same papier-mâché sculpture that he saw in Marcy's flat. Now it's on the street, accompanied by a television, and two men appear to be stealing it. So he runs after them, and to cut a long story short, he manages to get his hands on the sculptures, but the TV is lost. And then he returns to the room, and the plot details then develop. Now, I'm not going to go through them all. I just wanted to deliver this early taste to give you some idea of the chaos and the blow-by-blow events that happened to Paul in this particular night. We then get to meet a host of other crazy street characters, some of which I've mentioned earlier, as the clock ticks on. Credit to Scorsese here for his direction. It's slick, the characters impact you and are believable, and are the sort of folk you would rather never meet yourself. Other little images I'd like to share that are caught on film which reflect Scorsese's talent. Paul goes into a toilet to clean up after he gets to the bar, and he finds a graffiti image of a shark biting off a man's penis on the wall. Rather chilling, it might be said. There are two gay men in the bar as well, groping each other, wearing police hats. The late night disco, which is a gay bar that he visits, which has an assortment of different sexual orientations, having fun. It's quite risque, to say the least. And then he then moves on to another aspect of the film. There is an occasional glimpse of normality when Paul becomes interested in Marcy's tattoo, but these are rare moments amidst the personality disorders roaming around late at night. The scenes with Julie, the cocktail waitress, in her room are bizarre to the extreme, and again illustrate how lonely and broken these people are. She introduces Paul via the Monkey's last train to Clarksville and expects a positive response from Paul for her choice. Very attention-seeking behaviour, it might be said. And the script has a circular feel to it for me, as situations are revisited as the clock ticks on. The bizarre $20 bill is found by Paul, and he gets a taxi. He flags a taxi down, and it's the same one, but the cab driver takes the money and roars off. The papier-mâché sculpting. Paul is fleeing for his life later in the tale from a mob who suspect that he may have something to do with the death of the girl, but he escapes to be with the ice cream driver, a woman it might be had, and she hides him in a way that will become perfectly understandable given what you've seen before. And then to cop it all, there's a silent comedy sort of drive from the ice cream driver with Paul in the back, and again she repeats the crazy driving that we witnessed with the taxi cab, and Paul manages to slide out the back and arrives outside his apartment. So that brings down the final frames, and you catch your breath and think, wow, what happened? Anyway, to summarise After Hours, it's a film that requires more than one viewing, that's for sure. You need to keep your eyes on this. No quick visits to the bathroom, otherwise you might come back and not have a clue what's going on. The incidental stories that emerge throughout the journey are captivating. The characters are certainly more than just a fleeting interest. But it's a director's film, of course. Scorsese had his observant best, his detailed best, and thank goodness we've got him around. I'll certainly watch this one again, so there we have it. It's called After Hours, and it was directed by Martin Scorsese.